Today I'm going to share with you how to make homemade pickles. Welcome to the Water Bucket Homestead. Here's everything you're going to need to make the pickles. Starting with some fresh cucumber pickles from the farmer's market or grocery store, wherever you can find the little pickling cucumbers. When you're ready to actually make the pickles and keep them in their forever jar for a year, you're going to need, they say distilled water. I'm using water from a well, vinegar at 5%. The regular vinegar that you buy from the grocery store is sufficient. You don't need to buy special pickling vinegar. I think they charge you for more money because they call it pickling. You'll need some salt, you'll need some sugar, and then we have some dill weed, peppercorn, and fresh garlic. There are other spices you can use. I personally don't keep them on hand or like them, so I will link the Homesteading Family's video where I found her recipe, and this is just my interpretation of her recipe. I've also taken her measurements on her card and I've reduced them smaller to the jars that I have. I believe these measurements on the screen are from the Homesteading Family's video, and then I will have my conversion listed in the description box down below. Oh, the tools we'll need: cutting board, a knife, some teaspoon, tablespoons, a measuring cup to figure out the amount of water and liquids we're going to put in the jars, and then I'm using these large mason jars, wide mouth, to store the pickles. As I mentioned, this recipe came from Carolyn at Homesteading Family, and I'll have her video linked below. I will also have my conversion. These pickles were amazing last year. I'm continuing to make them again this year. So the first thing you do when you get home from the farmer's market or picking your own, or if you happen to go to the grocery store, you can get these cucumber or pickling cucumbers, and you want to cut the flower end off. So you can kind of tell when you look at this end, you can see where the vine broke on it, and then this will be a little flat. Sometimes the flower is still on it, and that kind of helps you know. And when I cut mine, I'm going to cut mine into little pieces how I want the pickles when I put them in their forever jar. You can tell there's a little marking. I cut that off. You want to have perfect pickling cucumbers. To start the brine, according to the conversion, I'm going to add 8 ounces of warm water. I will add 3 tablespoons of salt. You want to use the best salt. We want to make sure the salt disintegrated into the water. Next, we'll add cold water, 16 ounces. I'm going to place the cucumbers into the jar. And I'm going to add the remaining cold water up to the top. I poured 16 ounces. I won't use it all. And this can last in your fridge up to 7 days, so you don't necessarily have to pickle your cucumbers right away. Please note the measurements I'm about to show you were for the original recipe. You'll have to reduce everything by half, and I'll have that listed in the description box down below. We are now going to make the brine. Calls for 8 cups of distilled water. I'm using water from a well. In case you're not familiar with water from a well, my folks don't live in an area that gets the municipal city water. They tapped into their own well, and they have the reverse osmosis system. This water is super clean. You have no chloride or fluoride or whatever it is that they put in city water to clean it, to put it through our pipes. I'm trying to remember how many cups I just put in. So this is 4. Then we need 6 cups of vinegar at 5%. This is white distilled vinegar. And now we need 1/4 cup sugar. And then we need 1/2 cup of salt. This is the 1/4 cup, so we'll do 2 of these. And we're going to bring this to a boil. I'm going to turn the burner on high, and I'm going to give this a little bit of a stir to help dissolve the sugar and the water. To dissolve the sugar and the salt. Now we're going to prepare the jars. We'll start with 4 jars and 1 head of garlic. It says 2 to 3 cloves per jar. Just gonna cut the bottom off. I'm going to peel them. Next up, we're going to put some peppercorns into each of the jars. So we'll just put a few in each. Next up, I'm going to use a teaspoon of dill weed for each one. If you have fresh dill, you can use it as well. There are more herbs you can put in here. I don't use them. So again, I'll link the original recipe to see what types of herbs she used. And this is what I used last year, and the pickles taste amazing, and they lasted for, well, they would have lasted for a year if I had made enough for the year. I didn't make enough and ate them. I'm going to take the pickles that were in the first brine. The first one wasn't a brine. I don't know what you call it. But now we're going to place the pickles in the jar, and I hope I have enough jars. Otherwise, I'm going to go to the grocery store. But you definitely want to take stock of what you have first before you proceed. Or you can just do what I do, which is like usually half the time. Uh-oh, that's not big enough. Or that's too big. Just cut that. Same with that guy. I'll just cut these in half. These are quite big. Alright, the 4 jars were enough for this batch. Always cleaning as I go along. The brine has become to a boil. I'm gonna grab a soup spoon to ladle the water into the jar. So I've got my little ball funnel. So I think 1 scoop may be enough. I know you want the whole cucumber to be covered. I may modify a little bit. Oh. Okay, now I'm gonna put lids on them. Once they cool down, I'll place them in the refrigerator, and these will be good for a year. I'll probably eat them in the next 2 weeks.